Well, we're honored to have Michael Mauro here today to talk to us a little bit about his political history. He's a great Democrat. It's a real pleasure to be able to chat with you for a few minutes about that, Michael. You come from such a rich, famous family here in Des Moines. Mauro's have made a big impact. Was there anything about your family background that helped to encourage you to get involved in politics?
Not really. Our family always was involved in everything. My father worked for the city of Des Moines, literally, for 35 years, and I retired from the city. Our family's a big family, and we've always just been a family that's been involved and been active, and got involved in the political side of it. I know from my standpoint, clear back in 1972 when I just graduated from Drake University, and got involved there, and it gets in your blood. And once it gets in your blood, it's something you want to see through. And I love public service and been doing it close to 30 years now.
When was the first time you really felt like you were taking an active role in politics?
Actually,
even as a volunteer.
At 1972, I was thinking about this. I was a committee person in Precinct 77, which is on the south side. And I just was out of college, took my first job as a school teacher in Council Bluffs. And I got a call. I didn't resign. When I got my job and moved out to Council Bluffs in September, I got a call from Jim Brick, who was the county chairman at that time, that they were having a convention. They were going to be electing delegates to go on to the conventions, and could I come in for it? I said, Jim, I really can't come in. I've got a lot going on. I'm coaching. He said, well, I'll check on the plane fares. And I flew in for like $21, came to the convention, and it was absolutely interesting convention, trying to get someone to be, we're electing delegates to go on to the next level so they could get to the, become a national delegate at the 72 election, which was the George McGovern election.
Were you pledged to anybody as a delegate when you
I was not. I really got involved to meet people. I liked Democratic politics. The Democrats was still around at that particular time, even though it was on the downswings from when Roxanne and everybody got it started. But I enjoyed the process. I really had a lot of fun with it, and just got in my system, and from there, never could let it go.
All right. So you were teaching and coaching in Council Bluffs for a while, right?
Right. Teaching, coaching in Council Bluffs, and at that particular time, and met my wife. There. She was going to college at that particular time and finishing up her business school, and we moved back to Des Moines. I had an opportunity to get involved in our family's insurance and real estate business. I love teaching, and I think it's a wonderful profession, and really liked it. Thought I'd been a great teacher, but opportunity was there to come back home, and I got my real estate license and became a real estate broker, and we got involved in a real estate franchise called Century 21 when it first came out. My brother John and I had insurance, and brother Joe and real estate, and we started building homes. And we had a real good run at building homes. And at that particular time, if you remember the late 70s, which goes back quite a way, interest rates started going through the roof, especially in the late 70s. And again, with the real estate, with insurance, you know, you're networking, trying to meet people, talk to people all the time, and it always pushed me back to politics. And eventually decided to run for office myself. In 1982, I ran for county supervisor. Probably nobody believes this, but I ran for county supervisor in 1982, and I was in a district, it's a good solid Democratic district, and was going to run against the Republican in the district, and then reapportionment came in, and I got pushed into a district with another Democrat and another Republican, so there was two people there. I was too far in to get out of it at that particular time, and ran in the Democratic primary and won.
Wow.
Won the primary, and got into a general election with another incumbent. So I had to beat an incumbent on the Democratic side, which wasn't very good. Yeah, I didn't want to do that, but after the reapportionment came in, I said, I'm doing it. And then in the general election, I lost by 300 votes to the Republican incumbent. So that was my first taste of politics. But then it led me to something else, because at that particular time, Jim Maloney was the county auditor, and he was wanting to be the county assessor. And I got involved in a little bit of the intrigue there, and before you know it, I was appointed county auditor. So I'm actually a two-time county auditor, kind of like Grover Cleveland. You know, I was county auditor, then not county auditor, then back again to county auditor. So I was appointed, and then kind of had an agreement that I wouldn't run for office. So I didn't run. And then Ned Chino decided to run for county auditor. And when he ran for election, he had a three-way primary on the Democratic side, won that, won the general election. And then I moved over to the election director, where I stayed for 13 years, and really got involved in something that became real passionate. It was elections.
Just so we can kind of historically kind of walk through your political career. When you ran in the primary, who did you have to run against in the supervisory race?
I ran against a guy named Sam Anania, who kind of was a relative. He was but he'd been a long time Democrat, and it really became there was a lot of intrigue here, and it became really a heated campaign because he was the Democrat supervisor in the South Side District. I was a young guy who didn't know anything was coming into play, and we were able to put together a very good organization of hitting the streets and knocking on the doors and doing all those things, and we were able to pull it off. But unfortunately, there was another incumbent also in office I had to take on in the general election. So with reapportionment, when I was running against no particular person in that seat, I got pushed into a race with two incumbents.
Who was the Republican?
Murray Drake.
Oh, yeah.
So Murray Drake was the mayor of West Des Moines. And the difficult thing at that particular time was the South Side of West Des Moines, not only did reapportionment come into play, but it consisted of a district that consisted of the South Side precincts mixed in with the city of West Des Moines. And West Des Moines was very, very heavily Republican area. And so numbers in politics, people were asking me a lot, do you want to run in districts where the numbers are favorable? And they were fairly favorable there, and we almost pulled it off. And we lost by 292 votes or something like that.
Were you the first Mauro to put his name on the ballot?
I first one to put the name on the ballot.
And you ran for it before John did.
I ran for it before John, yeah. So, John's done a great job as county supervisor. He's a very passionate person about what he does and gets a lot of things done. But I was actually involved first. John wanted nothing to do with politics. That's a whole other story.
Oh, yeah.
When you hear about the John Mauro story, how he got into politics. So that was quite by accident.
Let's talk about the election process as it's proceeded over time. When you first became involved in that process with the auditor's office, what kind of equipment were you using to count votes?
Well, we were using, people have to remember, you go back to the days when we first came in, I came in as auditor and then as election director. They had lever machines. And hard to explain those lever machines. They were about 600 pounds apiece. I mean, they were big, bulky machines. And if you remember voting on those, you're probably old enough to vote on lever machines.
Yes, I remember.
You'd actually go in there and you'd pull, you get this big machine, kind of intimidating, with this big curtain. And the first thing you get in there, you'd pull the lever and the curtain would shut. So now the curtain would shut, and now you'd be pushing levers down. You'd be reading your ballot on the side with levers in there, and you'd be pushing down who you wanted to vote for, or voting a straight ticket, whatever the case may be. And then you'd push the lever back, and the bell would ring, and the curtain would open, and you'd come out. One of the nice things about lever machines, I'm convinced of this after working in elections and seeing how they work, lever machines were great for straight party voting. Because first thing they were intimidating. Because most of the people didn't want to admit they didn't know what they were doing. Because there was a little process to there. And once you pushed that handle and the curtain closed, the easiest thing for you to do, rather than go back and try to read sideways, was to push the lever, Democrat or Republican. And you could push that one lever, push the handle back, and get out of the machine, which a lot of people did. And I got the statistics to prove. If you go back and look at what happened with the lever machine, there was much more straight ticket voting during those days. And then if you wanted to vote a write-in, that was almost impossible, because you had to lift the lever up and then take a pencil with the side and try to write the person's name on it. And then when they set the machines, at the election office where they were setting machines, it was like doing a mirror, so everything was backwards. And then at the end of the day, if you want to talk about having no accountability in election, there was no way to make sure that everything, it was, but they're going back and recreating it became very difficult to do, because remember, when you did those levers, there was a little ball that turned around every time you did it and would make the count, and then you'd read the drop sheets at the end of the election to get your results. That's how people voted for years, and that was cutting-edge technology. And when we came in, one of the first things we did was try to move from the lever machine, which I think creates a lot of problems with no accountability, to the paper ballot, to the optical scanner. That's how we got involved with the optical scanner.
For a recount with the lever machine, all you could do is just tally up the different districts, right?
Yeah, with recount the lever machine was almost, I don't know how you could say, nothing to base it on other than the drop sheet, and checking the drop sheet, what rolled on the drop sheet, what the totals were that you had to report it on the screen. But here's how you got the results. At election night at 9 o'clock, the poll workers would close the polls. They would have this drop sheet, big sheet, I mean huge, and then they'd read the results over the phone to somebody's election office. somebody at the election office would then write the results down, and then they would turn them over to somebody else with a calculator who would add the results up, and then they'd post them on a big board where people would come down and see the results. Now you got 3 or 4 different people looking at the results where all kinds of things could go wrong. The canvas, if you were to contest the election, would just basically recreate what was on the drop sheet with what the people called on the phone, what the people wrote down, how to add it up on the calculator. And that's how the elections were done for years.
Did you save any of the old voting machines just for
There's one at the historical building, I believe. So we did save it. There was a machine kept back, and and for years, when we went to this new type of system, everybody said, "Oh, this is a lousy system." They thought that was so great with the lever machine. A lot of people had a difficult time with change, and they didn't want to move from there. But we've proved that at the end of the day, what we have now, I think, is even though if people are saying you're going back to paper ballot when you can use computers, it's the best technology out there to make sure you have the best type of election that's most secure and able to recreate. You always want to be able to go back and recreate the election to make sure you have the right one.
Now, you oversaw the changeover. What alternatives did you look at before you decided on the optical scanner?
Well, the optical scanner one was the first one that came through. I'll tell you the story about that. A guy came into the office one day, a little Ford Pinto, and he wanted to show me this machine. And I looked at this machine. I said, "Oh my God, this could be a good thing for us because we want to get rid of those lever machines. There was stuff about them that I didn't like." And we took a look at them. We said, "You know what? We're going to buy a few of these and start them off in absentee because that'd be the easy way for us to do it." We did the lever machines absentee. Now, if you remember how they did it, you're involved in the election process, but when they had the lever machines, when they did the absentee counting, you'd mail a ballot out to someone at their home like we do now, and the ballot would be the same size as what the machine is, so it might take up a whole table. And people would mark it and mail it back in this big, thick envelope, and then we would open them at the election office with the election board, and then they would read them to somebody who would then have a machine there and push the handles down and make the call. So it took forever to do. So I thought this will solve the problem in absentee, and it did. And that's how we started with it. And then one thing led to another, and we had an opportunity to purchase other machines because the lever machines took up literally 3 stories of the Harker Bush building to store the machine. So we had 3 stories of lever machines, 500 of them, 600, whatever there were. And we put together a plan showing that if you allow us to buy these new machines, what we can save in storage, what we can save in printing, and all those different type of things will pay for themselves. And the board supervisors bought on it, and that's how we moved into the optical scanner. And that worked and the sophistication's changed on so much. That's worked, and we're using a version of that now in Iowa and across the country. And it's a real election with a paper trail, where every vote counts. So I feel good about all that. I think those were good things that happened in Polk County and across the state.
Well, when you made the switch over, every county did their own thing, right?
Every county did. So that's the other thing came. So every county did their own thing. Some kept lever machines. Some said, "We're not going to go to that optical scan. We got new computer technology where you can touch the computer screen." And so you had the touch computer, which were pretty good. I looked at those, where instead of having any paper at all, you'd program your machine. I don't know if you've ever seen those or not, but it'd be a touch screen where you come in, you look at the screen, touch your choices, say you enter your vote, there would be your vote. I think it was good. It worked good. The old question came in by the naysayers. Wait a minute, where's the paper trail? How can we make sure? And then the computer theorists came in and said, "Wait, we can hack this machine. We can change those results. We think that there's no safety or security there. We need a paper trail." So the people with the computer device machines at that particular time said, "Okay, we'll put on a paper trail," which basically consisted of adding machine tape off to the side, which was like a little calculator. So when you came in there and touched that screen and you entered the results, it created a paper roll showing that was the people that you voted for. Well, those jammed up and created all kinds of problems. And one thing led to another, and the other question came into play. Now, what constitutes a vote? Because some counties, what constituted a vote in one county wasn't the same in another county. So that went on for a while until I got to the Secretary of State's office, and we were able to correct that.
So is it right now in the state of Iowa?
Everybody's using the same type of equipment. So we have one system that works with the paper trail, that provides for a way to reconstruct the election, that I feel everybody should be comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, everything's going to balance out. And we've proved that with recounts across the state, where both the parties came in and went through the process. And in almost every case, somebody left satisfied with, might not have been happy with it, but satisfied with how the system worked.
With regard to the 2000 election, when we had the famous punch card issue,
Right.
Did any, to your knowledge, did any counties in the state of Iowa use that punch card system?
No, we never did have punch cards in Iowa. So there was no punch card system. We did have some counties using computers. We did have some counties using levers. We had some counties that used just a plain paper ballot. So we had some of our smaller counties who just voted a piece of paper, put it in the box. But other counties that still had the lever machine. Then we had other counties that had the computers, and then the other ones had optical scans. So at the end of the day, you had to put all those together to come up with results. And it created some issues about what constitutes a vote and what doesn't constitute a vote, and that became heavily debated. And, one of the first things I did when I came into the Secretary of State's office was try to come up with a system that would put a uniform system across the whole state.
And just before we leave the punch card issue, because again, that was a famous part of our history, did you ever look at that as an alternative, the punch cards?
No, because they weren't certified in Iowa. You couldn't use them in Iowa, so that's one of the reasons why they probably would have been here. Many big jurisdictions use them. I went down to Florida. Therese Lepore, who was the person in that county that took all the heat for it. What happened there with the punch card system, which were used in a lot of big counties, is that you had too many people vote. And when you're punching that hole, just like you did, think about a piece of paper with the paper punch. You punch it once, it goes okay. You punch it 10 times, you get those. We heard about chads. The chads filled up. So at the end of the night, when you had a big election going on, you had thousands of punches. You were very hardly making it whole in the paper because there were so many chads, and those machines should have been cleaned out, which probably solved some of that issue. So what happened at the end of the day was you couldn't tell if it was a vote, a hanging chad, dimple chad, all those different things you heard, because of the fact that the punches weren't clear. And then at the end of the night, they'd run those cards through a tabulator, like an IBM machine, would count the holes. Well, some holes counted, some holes didn't count. Then you had the famous 2000 election. So that was that one will go down in all-time history. It's, and my feeling is election that never was, at least in Florida, at the end of the day, I don't think it was handled properly. I think that it got real wild. A lot of lawyers came in. And you see what happened. The Supreme Court decided the President of the United States.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Michael, do you feel comfortable talking about that 1998 investigation by the
No.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because that to me was an unusual event
Yes.
in our election history. But back in 1998, there was a supervisor primary in which the federal government took an interest in.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about that?
I remember it pretty vividly because I was the election director then, and I had my brother running for office. That automatically creates a interesting dilemma there. But at the end of the day, I was comfortable about everything we did, and it proved out that what we did with everything was right. And what happened with that was early voting, absentee voting. Absentee voting and early voting has grown. I can take you back to the days when Ned Shiloh ran for office the first time in the legislature as a write-in candidate. When we first started pursuing absentee voting on any kind of scale in this county. That's absolute true. And Ned was running as a write-in candidate because his name wasn't on the ballot. And idea came, let's go out and get people to vote absentee. Perfectly legal. Everything was done okay. People questioned it. And it became an investigation from there. That's how it started. And then again, going after Ned left office and coming through, when John ran for supervisor, he ran an absentee campaign in small districts, in legislative seats, and in supervisor seats and Senate seats. Early voting and getting the vote out, just like it's a big part of the whole presidential election process now, is a very good way to get your vote out. And no matter how you get your vote out, you want to make sure it's there. And they ran an absentee campaign, and what happened was they were passing out absentee request cards. Now, if anybody knows the people that follow politics know request card, that's what you sign to request an absentee ballot. And you turn the card in, and then they mail you out a ballot. Somehow it got turned around in there, and accusations were made that the election office was handing out ballots, that absentee request cards were actual ballots. John wins the primary in the primary election in '98. And all kinds of charges and counter-charges are filed by the opposition. Leads to the newspaper writing a lot of stories, which leads to investigators looking at the entire situation. They called on many people in the community. At that particular time was the supervisor district on the south side, called on many people in the south side community, we're talking about investigators now, and asking them how they got their ballot. Many of these people, you have to understand, they voted. I said, they brought the ballot out, and they marked Democrat on the ballot. You know what they did? They filled out a request card, signed their name, and said, I want a Democratic ballot.
Right.
Okay?
Right, that's true.
They were brought down to the election office, and then the ballots were mailed out. But even in questioning some of these people, which might have been elderly people, could have been anybody for that matter, some of them contended they got the ballot. Well, the ballot came out in the mail, and they voted the ballot, and the ballot would be either, at that particular time, I think they had to be mailed in, or hand-carried in. I can't remember when that law changed, but at one particular time they had to be mailed in. Anyway, brought the ballots down, and they were counted. That's what led to all this this question and counter-question about how do people get their ballots, and they took a good look at it, a hard look at it. And at the end of the day, came to the rightful conclusion after a very thorough investigation, in which the paper scrutinized it, the media scrutinized it. There wasn't hardly a day that went by that I wasn't under some type of questioning about how we handle the absentee process. And one of the best things I ever did in my political career was, after this, been in the paper like 32 straight days, and making every kind of charge you can imagine. A grand jury was convened. People were brought in for questioning. And when all the confusion and everything was straightened out, it was shown that we did the process properly. And one of the best things I did was I called for a press conference as county auditor. And I had it in the Board of Supervisors room, and I actually had a full house there. And at that press conference, I said, you know, I've watched this, I've got up to this every day and read these stories, I want to take you through the process. And I wrote a letter to the editor, desk editorial column, and went through this press conference and explained it to them. And to the credit of the newspaper, they sat down 5 other people who went through the whole process, and after we explained the process to them, and they were educated on it, they understood how it worked. And if there's anything that opened my eyes right then was, you know, transparency. Everybody knows it's the best. Educate, let people know what you're doing, get rid of all the misconceptions that when the ballots came to the election office, we were opening up and changing the marks and all those type of things. And was a turn for me in my political career, because from that and from all that scrutiny came a sense of, not only for me, but at least I felt it, and from the media and from the public, that, you know, this guy, he's doing a good job, he's doing the best job he can possibly do, and it brought a lot of credibility to a situation that, if you look back prior to that, you know, this guy's anything but honest too. He's very honest, and that's, I've always hung my hat on that, and I'm glad I did that. And certainly withstood a lot of things. I'm comfortable with how that came out. Definitely comfortable with how that came out, and felt I'm a better person for it. Even though at the time, difficult on my wife. My kids were in college, so they didn't have to see too much of it, but literally getting up every day and having somebody make some insinuation that you're doing something that you didn't do.
Yeah, and Michael, just one of my frustrations by that whole process was, I remember they did the federal investigation, found no abnormalities, but didn't report it out before the general election. So
no. That
cloud was kind of still out there at that time, wasn't it?
They didn't report it before the general election. I had to give credit to Senator Harkin, because they weren't going to issue any statement. I guess it's common that you might know this more, you're involved in the legal process more than I am. A lot of times they leave those with no decision at all. They just leave it out there in limbo, and the fact that they did nothing indicates that nothing happened. At that particular time, Senator Harkin put some pressure, might put, or at least question. There needs to be some resolution on this, and they came out with basically a statement saying that there was no wrongdoing on his part, and that, I guess, that was really a kind of a first, because I've heard a lot of times they normally just let those things sit out there, and the fact they took no action at all indicates that there's nothing, but they actually issued a statement. I'm trying to think who the U.S. attorney was at that time.
Nickerson.
That's right, Nickerson. And
but I don't remember the letter until '99, early '99.
It was after the election.
Yeah.
It was after. That was unfortunate, because it was after the election.
Yeah. And John had done nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong, and lost in the election. He won the primary and got beat in the general election.
By a nose.
By a nose.
Very close.
By a nose.
Hey, when did you become auditor?
I became auditor the first time in 1984. I was appointed.
Good
when
know,
Jim
but-
Maloney became county assessor. And then I ran for auditor in 1996.
Okay.
So I served there until 2006.
So when this primary happened, you would have been the auditor?
I was the auditor.
For sure.
I was the auditor in there, and it was one heck of a process for you.
At some point, you decided to run for Secretary of State.
I did.
And tell me a little bit about that. What went into your decision to run for Secretary of State?
When Secretary of State Culver decided he was going to run for governor, and I thought to myself, this would be a great opportunity to run for Secretary of State. And my reasons for running for Secretary of State were the best, because I've been a county auditor for 10 years. I've been elected for 12. I've seen about everything you can see in the election process, and learned to be good at it from experience. And I just saw an opportunity there to have somebody in the Secretary of State's office who had some idea what the process was on the local level. Because county auditors do the election. Secretary of State oversees the process, but really isn't hands-on every day. So I saw this great opportunity to take what I know as a county auditor, work with other county auditors to even make the election process better. And then when Culver finally decided to run, I went to the legislature, and still wasn't convinced I was going to run. I wanted to see if there was anybody else who wanted to run, so I met with the caucus on the House and Senate side, told them I was going to run, and went out there and started visiting around the state, and before you know it, I was unopposed in the primary election, and then got elected in the general election.
Do you remember anything about the general election that kind of sticks out in your mind?
It was great. No, just a great experience. I remember visiting in Iowa, and going around and visiting with people in Iowa, and saying to myself how incredible is one, how big the state is, and how nice the people were. It's a big state, and most of the people I talked to were just wonderful. Many places just excited to see somebody who was interested in the process, and I enjoyed that immensely. I was able to win that election, and then the job was a spectacular job for me. I'm very fortunate to work in the Capitol building, one of the prettiest places. I had the prettiest office in the Capitol, governors and everything else, and had a chance to have more accomplishments. I think a Secretary of State is anybody's ever going to see in 4 years, actually getting things done that were good for elections.
Well, I remember when you were running in 06, you said that it was such a privilege because you got to see parts of the state you'd never seen before.
You know what? I'd always tell people, you know what? You never think about vacationing in Iowa.
Yeah.
Because living here and born and raised here in Des Moines, what are you going to see out there? And I'm telling you, it's big, it's beautiful, and there's lots of things to see. And I've seen most of it. I've been everywhere from beautiful auditoriums to barns in somebody's backyard to American Legion Post to beautiful parks. And everywhere you went, the people were great. So, and we've accomplished so much, from uniform voting equipment to taking the school board elections and moving them to every other year. Military voting, we took the forefront. And I got support from the legislature. And an amazing thing to me was, absolutely amazing, not only did I get Democratic support, but I got Republican support. And I hold myself out, because I used to go to the Secretary of State meetings. I still hold myself out. I was one of the few guys in the United States of America to run for Secretary of State who wanted to be Secretary of State. And that is the honest truth, because most people see that as and I met them across the whole nation, and all of them concerned wanted to do the right thing, but very few have actually said, I want to be Secretary of State. They wanted to be governor, they wanted to be senator, they wanted to be congressman. If Secretary of State was going to get them there, that's the place to do it. So I'm grateful for being able to serve for those 4 years.
Yeah, in my lifetime, you had the best resume to become Secretary of State.
You know what? And I'm not boasting, but I tend to agree with you, because I spent a lot of time, and not more than the Secretary of State's office in elections. Right. But we had a good business services department. We accomplished so many different things, so many different ways, and I'm so fortunate. And really, I got to tell this story because it's part of the history. After the election day was over with, and the next day comes around, I go back to the office. You got to live up to the fact that things didn't pan out the way you were. About 10 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings, and it's the governor-elect, Cranston, and he calls to tell me that that was an unfortunate thing that happened in the election. I don't know if he was for me or not, but he basically went down that road and said that why don't you consider working for me, which took me completely off guard. And in the course of the conversation, I wasn't going to say anything to anybody, and then he appeared on Iowa Press that Friday night and announced that that he was interested in working for the campaign. I see it as a validation that must have did something right in those years you were there. If the opposing side can see something good in you, they want you to work for them. So I look at all those things as pluses. And certainly have enjoyed my time in politics, and I want to stay active and enjoy what I'm doing now as a labor commissioner.
And you had just 4 short years as Secretary of State, but you got a lot done. Was there anything that you felt like you would have liked to have finished? Is there anything?
Yes, I think there's some things that could be done. You know, there's the issue of voter ID that they like to make a issue of. First, the voting system in Iowa and the voting process in Iowa is about as good as it is in the country. And the reason why I know that, because other states have told me that. What we do is safe and secure, and everybody's vote counts, and we have very few issues. I can't say that we're a perfect state. I can't control what people do and not do. But our process works safe and secure in Iowa. There was a county auditor from Cerro Gordo County, Tim Klein, Republican, a friend of mine, who put together what's called the Precinct Poll Book Atlas that takes the election process to another level that can be used as polling places to verify people's votes. And right now, when you come to the polling place, you sign your eligibility slip, they'd look you in the book. Well, this did this all electronically through laptop computers. And a couple of things that it did is it helped verify that the voter was in the right precinct, but sometimes polling places people make mistakes with, and they end up voting a provisional ballot that ends up not counting. Or they are felons or we have them down as felons that are attempting to vote. And it helps us secure that vote even more, make it even more safe and secure. They've taken it to another level now. You talk about voter IDs, how we feel if you have the right person at the right polling place. They've got these scanners that you can use. You can show your voter ID card. You can show your driver's license. Matter of fact, if you scanned your driver's license or your voter ID card, if it was your driver's license, it put a picture up right in front on the computer, without having to have a voter ID, without having to put people through the process of what I have or what I don't have. And it was another level of safety and security, another level of sophistication that made it easier for the poll workers. Poll workers have a tough job, you know, and getting them to handle the election process when you got lawyers there in the year 2000, when Gore and Bush were running, literally. I'll never forget it. As a county auditor, Polk County Iowa was a tall sub-state. Polk County is a big state, and you had Mauro down there in the election office. We had to make sure everything was safe and secure. I actually got a call from the Bush administration, and then from the Gore campaign and the Justice Department, who all wanted to be at polling places in Polk County to see how the process worked. Now try to tell that to election officials, many retirees, that you're going to have these people there. At the end of the day, when the officials came, they had left with nothing to report. Where can you get a better compliment than that? When they come into your county, presidential election, you've got Gore, you've got Bush, and you've got the Justice Department, all want to see how your process works. And you turn it over to volunteers, and they walk away saying, nothing to report. I think that's a great compliment for voting and for the voting process in Polk County, which continues to be outstanding. Jamie's doing a great job with it, and he's doing an outstanding job. Voting is the most fundamental right that we have. I see it as a right, and I see it as and we want to make sure that people have that ability to do that. One of the shames is going to be is if they take this process to another level, which is making it more difficult. And I contend to when I campaigned, and I'd say this openly, that when I campaigned for Secretary of State, I knew as county auditor, there's 2 ideas out there. Safety and security is a big issue in this country today because you can't feel safe and secure any place almost anymore. You got to kind of be on edge. They use that to their advantage with elections. Then when I say they, I say the opposition party. Maybe my friends in the Republican Party don't agree with this, but I think they use safety and security and voter fraud and everything else to make the process look like it's vulnerable. And we're going to make it more safe and more secure. And one of the ways we're going to do it is by putting more restrictions on it. By putting more restrictions on it, nobody's going to get through the cracks. So the process isn't going to be open to everybody like we like it to be, but it's going to be safer and more secure. There's a real method to that madness, and that madness is we get fewer people to show up. We know they're going to be Democrats. And we know that if we can get fewer people to show up in the process and our people come, we win. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how they try to say it in any other way, that's a lot to do. And I can close with this. Iowa's got a great election process. Can make it better all the time. But people in Iowa should feel comfortable about their vote, how it counts and how it works.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.